And a very pleasant welcome to another edition of Defo on 5. We were a late scratch yesterday because weird things happen in Florida, like it rains torrentially. A 1 in 1,000 year event that we are still somewhat experiencing as the Fort Lauderdale Airport is going to be closed till about 9 a.m. on this Friday. And a lot of people getting washed out all over the place. In fact, later on today, we're supposed to be at Gulfstream Park, and I'm assuming they're a go because track maintenance, track superintendents are the best. That they should be doing all the NFL games. They wouldn't have had everybody slip sliding away at the Super Bowl if they had gotten the track superintendent out there to take care of that field. Atrocious conditions they played the Super Bowl in this year, and it's always amazing to see. You could have any kind of weather Armageddon, and the only question would be: are the races going to be on or off the turf? And there's still a shot they might run the ninth race on the grass course, even though it was sopping wet just a couple of hours ago. They get that thing cleaned up pretty quickly. So hopefully we'll be able to get into the Hallandale area because Hallandale, Hollywood, Dania Beach, those seem to be the hardest hit. I guess there were some areas out west. Lubie, you held up pretty well. I know I did here, which is surprising because I'm right here on the beach where the slightest shift in the wind, and all of a sudden the ocean is washing up against the condos across the street. But that's Florida for you, right? Where weird things happen, where they ban books and abortions and make more liberal use of guns.
Yes.
That's what the legislature is spending its time on, and they still haven't solved the problem of drainage here. Although this was really an
Yes.
aberration, was it not?
Yeah, I was blaming drainage because Mayo's area in that Mike Mayo, who we do a show with on our South Florida Live every day, is in that Dania Beach area, and whenever it rains at all, they get
Yeah.
flooding. So their drainage isn't good already. But no, this wasn't just drainage. They
No.
got with like 20 plus inches of rain in like a 24-hour span, and way more than that in a 3 day span. That this was just some epic event plus crappy drainage.
Yes, weird things happen in Florida. There's no doubt about it. I think it was the first time I ever heard of pink eye, besides Lafitte pink eye, was when I moved to Florida. Although I guess that's fairly universal because remember, Bob Costas had pink eye when he was hosting the Olympics. And where was he? He was in like Austria or something, or Japan,
And
and he toughed it out anyway. He sat there on the set, and even though he had to rub his eye every couple of seconds, I mean, his eye was in worse shape than Arturo Gatti's was in the second Mickey Ward fight. And he still, got up there, pro that he is, and flawlessly didn't muffle or muff a single word, which we've already, flubbed a few, and we're just getting started here. And we haven't said anything yet because, Luby, the sum of all of your anxiety, of all of your paranoia, of all of your skepticism, of all of your worry, the Heat Nation is on its collective knees, cowering in fear today that the Miami Heat might miss the playoffs as they play the Chicago Bulls. Is it possible? Mike Lubie Lubitz? Yes, of course it is. You're asking the Bulls to do a lot. They're 5.5 point underdogs in the game tonight. Yet, how about this statistic? And I don't know if it's unusual to think that the Heat should handle the Bulls with relative ease tonight. We thought that about the Hawks, did we not, Mike Lubie Lubitz? Who represents the tougher team in your estimation? The Hawks, notoriously a soft team, dysfunctional family, as we mentioned. I mean, more dysfunctional than the Mayweathers, maybe even the Mansons. I'm not sure, what level of dysfunctionality you want to place the Atlanta Hawks at. But right before the game, they announced, hey, you know what? We don't care about this Trae Young kid. We'd like to get rid of him tomorrow if we could. We're taking calls. Hey, Pat, you want him? You got him. All we want is like Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero, and you got Trae Young. Skinny little runt of a kid who likes to chuck the ball from the Coke machine and isn't necessarily. It seems odd because in interviews, he doesn't seem like a bad guy, does he? Trae Young, what do you think? Trae Young, would you take him on your team? If he
yes,
comes to the park, you would take Trae Young.
oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I would take Trae Young on the Heat in a freaking blink of an eye. He is. He's had issues going back to Oklahoma. He is. I don't know if he's a me guy because he's a good passer, but he likes to shoot it when he wants to shoot it, where he wants to shoot it, how he wants to shoot
He throws up some atrocious bricks. I mean, where you're just looking and going, really, Trae? That's
it.
all you could come up with on that particular possession? To stand there. I mean, it's not like he goes Mark Jackson and dribbles the ball for 23.9 seconds of the 24-second clock, then throws up a hook shot over the center of the opposition while playing in the low post. But, he'll end up with the ball in the last 10 seconds of the possession clock and the shot clock. And, all of a sudden, just standing like 40 feet away will hoist a line drive, low-level brick that comes off, and thank goodness he had good rebounders in that game against the Miami Heat. Now, if the Heat play like they did against the Atlanta Hawks, you would have to say there is no shot that they beat a very determined and inspired Chicago Bulls team. If you watched the second half when they came back, I thought it was only 15. When I tuned in, they were down 15. They
19.
were down 19 points at one juncture of that ball game. As was the case, I guess the two games had a parallel that were played that night, which was Wednesday night, because you had the Lakers also down 15 in their game against the Minnesota Timberwolves, and they bounced back one in an overtime. The Bulls handled it in regulation on the road against the Toronto Raptors. Played a great ball game. Zach LaVine, who Andy, our good friend Andy, was telling us, Zach LaVine, how is it that he's not Jewish? I thought we had one tribesman in the NBA that was actually doing
Well,
something of
it's not
merit.
spelled the way the Jews spell it.
Oh no,
Lavine. The Jewish way, I think it's Levine. He's not Jewish.
every
Exactly.
guy that I knew that was named Levine was just Jewish as I am.
Yeah.
Which I guess that's not necessarily very Jewish in
It's
terms
like
of
our buddy Ken
practicing the
Jacobson
traditions. Yes,
is spelled Jakobsen. It's Sen
yeah,
instead of Son. One's Swedish, which is not Jewish, and one
yeah.
is like Eastern European, which is Jewish. So
Jewish
you're
or not, it doesn't matter. Good player, man, and
right.
he had a monster ball game against the Toronto Raptors. So will the Heat be able to
Oh,
stop him, or only hope to contain him
oh.
in the game tonight? And then you have DeMar DeRozan, who has turned into an excellent player. You say he's a one-dimensional, non. Superstar type. But wow, DeMar DeRozan plays a hell of a game. I mean, if all he does is play offense, Lubie, then I don't have a problem with that. Those mid-range jumpers that he hoists up there, very, very tough to stop. Butler-esque almost. He reminds me a little bit of Kawhi Leonard, although you say no
No,
on that.
he's a good
Kawhi Leonard.
offensive player. Like he's a good old school offensive player because his 3 points. He's a mid range guy that can get to the basket. He doesn't really facilitate. He doesn't. His defense is suspect,
Yeah.
and he's not a great rebounder. But he's a good offensive player. I'm not. He's just not Kawhi. Like Kawhi, when Kawhi's Kawhi, he does everything. He's as good as anybody in the NBA.
All right, season series between the two teams. It was not 2-0. It's 3-0 in favor
Oh,
of the
fun.
Bulls.
Nice.
3-0. They played way back in October of 22. And this was at Miami. The Bulls win that one 116-108. Early in the season, the Heat were kind of floundering around a little bit, and Chicago was supposed to be a team that was on the ascent. They had problems all year. Did Lonzo Ball play at all this year, or was he out for the entire season?
He was out from January on.
Oh, okay.
Before then, I don't know how much he played even then.
Okay, I know he had problems. They shut him down. He had to go back get more surgery, and who knows? His career may well be in jeopardy since he's done a disappearing act. You need a search warrant to find anybody to even talk about Lonzo Ball. But if he was in the lineup tonight, obviously it would be a big difference. I don't know if he was on October 19th. I didn't really check that deeply into it, but 116-108, Chicago Bulls, December 20th at Miami. 113-103, Chicago Bulls. So we have an 8-point differential and a 10-point differential. 2 games played here in the Heat's house. And this is maybe why the Heat Nation is trembling, Lubie. I'm not feeling it here in this town. You're not seeing the same kind of excitement you saw around the Raptors when they were losing to the Chicago Bulls, and 20,000 people were outside the arena yelling and screaming and dancing and jumping up and down. We don't have that here. We have indifference at this stage, and it's not quite to the point yet where you're sensing that people are thinking, well, I hope they lose tonight because that way they'll be in the lottery and they won't be in the playoffs. And you're asking yourself a couple of things on that. A, what the hell is this if it's not the playoffs? And B, I mean, a low lottery pick for the Miami Heat isn't necessarily going to do them any good at this stage because they are snookered. They are stuck with a roster that, unless something really bizarre happens, where some superstar wants out and Pat Riley's able to go ahead and broker a deal, like for a Trae Young, I don't know that their roster changes much in the next few months. And they go in the next season again with what you would have to think after this year and the flat out disappointment that this year has been so far. They go in with a relatively bleak outlook, do they not? Not the same kind of optimism that they had coming into this year where, wow, I mean, how deflating was this season overall where you were a shot away, literally the old Rolling Stones thing, a shot away from going to the NBA Finals last year. Jimmy Butler hoists one up there. Jimmy Buckets, who usually is reliable in these spots, misses a shot, and the Heat end up losing to the Boston Celtics in 7 hard-fought games.
Yes.
And instead of prospering and using that as a springboard, they shoot like they all of a sudden lost their sight in one eye. Guys that you thought were going to be really good turn out to be and they really take a giant quantum leap backwards from where they were a year ago. So here they are on the brink of elimination, where they host the Chicago Bulls tonight, 5.5-point favorites. The game, March 18th, the most recent game between the two clubs, was an equal abortion in terms of effort by the Heat. 113-99 Chicago. That was in the Windy City, and that took place just a few weeks ago. So 3-0 Chicago Bulls against the Miami Heat. Is that enough to dissuade you from thinking that the Heat will ride to a nice, easy victory tonight?
No, I think they're losing. I don't think they have anything.
You think they go down? Okay.
Yeah, they're losing. They're winning this game. I mean, when you play the Hawks like that and you had everything to play for, and the Hawks seemingly had nothing to play for. They have a new coach who's been in. The reports are out that they're open to trading everyone, meaning they're looking to trade Trae Young.
They want to dismantle this team. They know they're going nowhere.
Well, exactly. They're ready to rebuild, and you're at home, and Jimmy Butler and Hero and Bam are saying the right things, and you lose. And it's not like they played well. The Hawks weren't great. It's you were lifeless. Like if you can't
absolutely no zip, no bounce in their step.
You can get up for that game. To me, how I don't see. And look, the Bulls now have some life. This thing with DeMar DeRozan's daughter, which I find asinine. There's some fun around them. They're just saying screw it. They're having a good time. The Heat look like they're walking on death's door. They look like there's nothing left, and it's been like that for about a month. And I don't
zombies. Yes, they look like the extras in the Night of the Living Dead. Unbelievable.
So I'm not. It's not the I'd rather have a lottery pick, which I would. I'd rather have a lottery pick than getting swept by the Bucks. But I don't care about that because again, like we've talked about, making the playoffs is always better than not. So I'd rather make the playoffs. I just don't see it. Like I'm not rooting for them to tank. Some people are like, "Oh, Spoelstra, do the right thing." No, go try. They're just not gonna. So I don't have to worry about it.
I can't imagine that would be part of the Heat DNA, the Heat culture, to tank a game to get a lottery pick when you're one game away from taking on the Bulls. I mean the Bucks, and you're thinking, hey, I mean, are we not at least in there with a shot? They've given the Bucks problems in the past, and the Bucks got their retribution. Are they totally out of it in a series against the Bucks? Probably so. I mean, but you have to give yourself a chance. I mean, that's what sports are all about. Give yourself a shot to see if you can do some damage. Maybe things start to click into place, and maybe the Bucks. You never know, right? The Greek Freak turns an ankle in Game 1, and now it's game on. Yep. And you end up in a favorable situation. Unfavorable for our Florida Panthers. Did that game determine that they were going to end up with the 8th seed last night, as they lost to the Carolina Hurricanes 6-4? Because if that put them in that position, that is a very vulnerable position. Yes. There is a slight history of 8 seeds beating the number 1 seed, but look what they're up against this time, Lubie. Boston Bruins on the season. Their final record, 65 wins, 12 losses, and 5 overtime losses. So they ended up with 135 points, both the 65 wins and 135 points. Unprecedented, Mike Lubitz. In NHL history, no team has ever won that many games or tallied that many points in the standings. So Boston Bruins, and they did it right from the shoot. They started out red hot like the Tampa Bay Rays are right now, and they just carried it over. Since like week 1 of the season, people have been projecting, well, if they keep this up, they're going to break the record, the all-time record for points and wins. And they did. So by virtue of losing that game last night, the Florida Panthers, who we thought had a little bit of momentum going into the playoffs, they certainly did until the last couple of games. They end up losing to Toronto, which was a good game. And in the third period, wild scoring last night, as it ended up, it was like 2-0 going to the third period in favor of Carolina, and ended up a 6-4 game. But that being said, they run right into a brick wall, do they not? Yes. Reminds me of the old, I've referenced this guy. It's probably too old for many of you 5 Reasons Sports Network fans. But the thrill driver, Joey Chitwood, you can look him up. He used to be featured in commercials for insurance companies. And his job every day was to go to work, put a crash helmet on, and drive cars into a brick wall to test the reaction. and see how safe or unsafe they were. I mean, this was a very primitive way of getting a barometer on that. You would think they might be able to do it with computer simulation or whatever, but no, they put Chitwood in a car, and his job was to drive into a brick wall, and they featured him in a couple of commercials. And you were thinking, his wife must love this, right? She hands him a little sandwich in a brown paper bag and goes, "Have a nice day at work, Joey." Knowing that his first move is going to be to get in a car and at about 60 miles an hour crash into a brick wall. That's what it seems like the Panthers have run into. They are the Joey Chitwood of the NHL right now with the Boston Bruins history. And I guess I couldn't get a number on this because sometimes you Google stuff, and instead of just giving you like, I Googled how many times has a number 8 seed in the NHL knocked off a number 1 in the postseason.
Oh,
How many times would you think it was? There were 3 examples they showed, but I want to say that there probably are more.
yeah.
I do remember that run by the Montreal Canadiens against the Capitals in 2010. I remember watching many of those games, and it was a shocker. The Canadians were just playing fantastic hockey, and it seemed to be really in sync at the right time of the season. They did make a run. I think they went. Did they go all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals that year?
It was either
The
the
Montreal
conference,
Canadiens. I don't think they
conference or
won it.
Stanley Cup. No, they didn't win it. It was conference or Stanley Cup. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
they won a couple of series though, at the very least, and so that was a great run, and it happens. The Capitals were known as choking dogs in the postseason for many years, and maybe still are, but they did win a championship one year after being down. I think they were the number 1 seed, and they were down 2-0 after losing their first 2 at home in their opening series to the number 8 seed, and
Yep.
then went on and finally won their championship with Ovechkin. San Jose did it in 2000. They knocked off St. Louis, the St. Louis Blues in the West, and Edmonton knocked off Detroit as an 8 seed in 2006. And I'm thinking there are other examples. Those were the only ones that were posted when I looked this thing up. But then they wanted you to go through a series of ads, like you go through a series of trap doors down on Canal Street to try and get some knockoff purse, some Gucci bag that you're going to buy for your wife and pretend that it's real. And in the meantime, you go through more trap doors than they did in the Deer Hunter during the Russian roulette scenes, right? We're like, man, where are these guys going? But yeah, it's going to be quite a feat, an accomplishment if the Panthers, which you gave rise to hope, right? People were thinking, yeah, they'll probably win a couple of rounds, but if that game last night was the determining factor in them facing the Bruins in the first round, you're talking about ruining any shot that you had right out of the blocks there. I mean, this is a horse going to its proverbial knees right out of the gate, and the jockey is on the ground, and you're thinking, let's hope he's okay. And then after you see the jockey get up and walk away, you go, you, like it was Michael Irvin on the ground in Philadelphia. Tampa Bay Rays off to a 13-0 start. Do you realize this? We have our Degenerate Friday coming up on our Defo show on South Florida Live. And you guys can check that out anytime also. We appreciate you guys subscribing that are fans of ours on 5 Reasons Sports Network. If you had parlayed $100, let's assume that all of these bets were going to average out to be in about even money, Louie. If you had parlayed $100 from the opening game on the Tampa Bay Rays, you know where you're at right now? You would be debating whether to go. I think the Rays start like a long road trip now, but you would be debating whether to let it ride one more time, and you'd be up to over $800,000 on that parlay.
That's crazy.
Why didn't we think of that?
Oh, good.
Right? Everybody's talking about the Yankees and all the other teams there in the AL East. Everybody's always trying to make a case for the Toronto Blue Jays. Watch out, the Blue Jays are loaded. And, they all naturally, have to try and compete with the Yankees because of their massive payroll and home run prowess. And sure enough, here are the Rays, 13-0 with zero payroll, no interest. They did draw 20,000 for the game yesterday. They had a day game to wrap up their series, which bingo, man. I mean, they win it again, and they're blowing teams out. Their run differential so far in the season is something like 130-30
Jeez.
cumulatively across the 13 games. A monster. How do they do it? Front office ingenuity, my God, it's on display there, and I wish we could just get a dose of this from some of our, for some of our South Florida teams. All right, that's it for Defo and 5. A lot of fun being with you. Catch our Degenerate Friday show, South Florida Live, the Defo show with Mike Lubie Lubitz. For Mike Lubie Lubitz, I'm Jeff DeForest. You guys have a nice dry weekend, everybody. As fortunately, it looks like today we're going to have a reasonably decent day, so maybe some of this stuff will dry out, and we will see you next time on Defo on 5.